You must pay $150K for Mom's funeral. My stepdaughter demanded a luxury ceremony for my wife, who died with her lover while running away. I ignored her and exposed years of fraud and betrayal. The day I got the call from the hospital, I was in my office reviewing contracts. The doctor's voice sounded distant, professional, almost robotic. Mr. Herrera, we're sorry to inform you that your wife Gabriela and Mr. Rodrigo Sanchez died in a car accident early this morning. Both died on impact. Rodrigo Sanchez, the name echoed in my ears like a gong. My business partner, my supposed friend of 15 years, the godfather of Camila, my stepdaughter. I hung up the phone without a word. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I felt absolute clarity, as if someone had turned on all the lights in a room that had been in semi-darkness for years. The pieces fit together with surgical precision: Gabriela's sudden business trips, the call she would cut short when I entered the room, the knowing laughs she shared with Rodrigo at family gatherings. It had all been right in front of my eyes, but I had chosen the comfort of ignorance. 2 hours later, Camila burst into my office without knocking. At her age, my stepdaughter was a younger, more calculating version of her mother. She was wearing a black dress she had clearly just bought, with the tag still discreetly hanging from the side. "Matthias, we need to talk about Mom's funeral," she said without a trace of tears in her perfectly made-up eyes. "I'll take care of everything. Mom would have wanted something elegant, dignified. I'm thinking of the Garden of Remembrance. Imported white flowers. Chamber orchestra. Approximately $150,000 should be enough." I looked at her in silence. Camila had never called me dad, not even stepfather. To her, I was always Matthias, the man who paid the bills while she and her mother enjoyed the money I generated with my financial consulting firm. "There will be no funeral," I said simply. Her face contorted into a grimace of confusion. "Excuse me, I said there will be no funeral, at least not one that I'm financing." Camila let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. "You're in shock, it's understandable, but Mom deserves a proper farewell. She was your wife. She was my wife who died in a car with my business partner at 3 in the morning. Camila, they were coming from a hotel on the outskirts of the city. Do you want me to organize a funeral to celebrate that?" The color drained from her face. You knew. I do now. And I suspect you've known for a long time, too." Camila regained her composure with impressive speed. She was a master in the art of manipulation, trained by the best. "Don't be ridiculous. Mom loved you, and even if she didn't, she built this life with you. She has the right to a dignified burial. The neighbors, our friends, the family. What are they going to think? That the truth is coming out?" I replied. "They can think whatever they want. I don't care. This is crazy." Camila raised her voice. "You're being cruel and irrational. You know what? I don't need your permission. I'll organize the funeral myself." "And with what money?" The question stopped her in her tracks. Her eyes narrowed, calculating with Mom's inheritance. Obviously, she had accounts, properties that were in my name. I interrupted her. "The house where you live, the car you drive, the credit cards you use. Everything is in my name. Camila, your mother never worked a day in the 12 years we were married. Everything she had because I gave it to her." The silence that followed was thick, laden with poison. Camila looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. And maybe it was true. For years, I was the invisible man who signed checks and remained silent, while she and Gabriela treated me like a useful piece of furniture, but with no emotional value. "You were always a resentful man," she finally spat out. "A small man with an inferiority complex. Mom gave you the best of herself, and your mother lied to me for years." I cut her off. "She cheated on me with my partner. She probably spent my money on hotels and romantic getaways. And you knew it. I won't pretend to mourn someone who betrayed me until her last breath." Camila stood up abruptly. Her purse fell to the floor, spilling its contents. Among the objects that rolled out, I saw a crumpled envelope. I picked it up before she could react. It was addressed to Gabriela with the sender Rodrigo Sanchez. The date was from 3 weeks ago. "Give me that." Camila held out her hand. I opened the envelope. Inside was a confirmed reservation for 2 at a luxury resort in the Bahamas. The dates: next week, the week of our 12th anniversary. They were planning to go away together, I murmured, more to myself than to her. "On our anniversary?" Camila said nothing. Her silence was confession enough. "How long did you know?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. What does it matter now? They're dead, she replied with disdain. The only thing that matters is that we honor their memory properly. At that moment, something definitively broke inside me. It wasn't pain, it was liberation. Get out of my office, I said, and get out of my house before 6 this evening. Take only what's yours. Anything I bought stays. You can't kick me out. That's my house. It's my house. I bought that property 5 years before I met your mother. Check the documents if you want. You have until 6. Then I'll change the locks. This is illegal. I'll call the police. Do it, I said, turning my attention back to the computer. And while you're at it, explain to them why a 24-year-old woman with no job or income of her own believes she has a legal right to stay in the property of a man who is not her biological father and with whom she has no legal ties. Camila opened her mouth, then closed it. The legal implications of her situation were beginning to penetrate her anger. For years, she had enjoyed a luxury lifestyle based solely on her mother's marriage to me. Now, that marriage had ended in the most definitive way possible. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a man who finally stopped being an idiot. I replied without looking up. 6 o'clock, Camila. Not a minute more. She left, slamming the door so hard it shook the walls. That night, at 6:05, I called a locksmith. At 7, the locks on the house had been changed. Camila had come and gone, taking 2 suitcases of clothes and hurling insults that I completely ignored from the other side of the door. When she finally left, I walked through the house that now belonged only to me. 12 years of marriage reduced to empty spaces and silence. But for the first time in years, that silence didn't oppress me, it liberated me. The next day the call started. First it was Gabriella's mother, sobbing over the phone. Matthias, son, we need to talk about the funeral arrangements. Camila says you're refusing to Camila. She's right. I interrupted. There will be no funeral financed by me. You're free to organize whatever you want with your own resources. But Gabriella was your wife. You have a responsibility. Gabriella died with her lover in a hotel. I replied with a calmness that surprised even myself. My only responsibility was to a faithful wife, and that woman ceased to exist a long time ago. The crying turned into shouts of indignation, then into vague legal threats. I hung up. Then Gabriella's brother, Daniel, called, trying the rational approach. Matthias, I understand you're hurt, but think about the family. Think about how this will look. Gabriella made a mistake, yes, but she deserves dignity in death. Where was this concern for dignity when all of you knew about the affair and no one told me anything? I asked. Guilty silence on the other side of the line. I thought so. I continued. Organize whatever you want, but don't count on me or my money. The calls continued for 3 days. Relatives, mutual friends, even the parish priest of the church Gabriella occasionally attended. All with the same message. Forgive, forget, be the bigger man. None of them acknowledging the fundamental betrayal, the sustained deceit, the complicity of all of them in keeping me in the dark. I gave them all the same answer. No. On the 4th day, Camila appeared in my office again, this time without the black dress or perfect makeup. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked small, vulnerable. It was an act, of course. Camila was too much like her mother to show genuine vulnerability. May I sit? She asked in a soft voice. I nodded, curious to see what new strategy she had prepared. I've been thinking, she began, folding her hands in her lap. You're right. Mom hurt you. We all hurt you by not telling you the truth, and I understand you're angry. But she looked up, her eyes shining with carefully calibrated tears. She was my mother, Matthias, the only mother I'll ever have. And I know I wasn't the best daughter to you, but for 12 years you were the closest thing I had to a father. Doesn't that count for anything? I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine sincerity. I found none. How much do you need? I asked directly. The mask cracked for a second. What? For the funeral. How much do you need? I didn't come for money, Camila. I sighed. We both know why you came. Tell me the figure. She swallowed, recalculating. 50,000 would be enough. Something simple, but dignified. And after the funeral, where do you plan to live? Her eyes lit up with hope. I thought maybe we could reach an agreement. I could stay in the house to help with the hope died. But I continued. I'll make you an offer. I'll give you $25,000, 15 for a modest funeral, 10 for you to rent an apartment and get settled. In return, You'll sign a document waiving any future claims on my property, my income, or anything I own. 25,000, she repeated incredulously. You spend more than that on a suit. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. Mom gave you the best years of her life. Your mother lied to me during the best years of my life. I corrected her. There's a difference. 25,000 or nothing. You have until tomorrow to decide. She stood up, rage replacing the false vulnerability. I'll sue you. I'll find a way to go ahead, I said. But in the meantime, you'll need money to live, to eat. That money will have to come from somewhere, and it won't be from me unless you accept my offer. I left her with that reality and turned back to my work, ignoring her presence until she finally left. That night, alone in the house I had shared with Gabriella, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the terrace. The stars shone indifferently above me. I thought about the 12 years I had dedicated to a marriage that was now revealed as an elaborate farce. I thought about Rodrigo, my partner, the man I had known since college, who had been at my wedding, who had dined at my table hundreds of times while planning his betrayal. But the strangest thing was that I didn't feel the heartbreaking pain everyone expected me to feel. I felt something cleaner, colder. I felt closure. My phone vibrated. A message from Camila. I accept your offer. When can I pick up the money? I smiled in the dark. Of course she accepted. She had no alternative. I replied, tomorrow at 10. Bring your ID. The lawyer will have the documents ready to sign. Another vibration. Lawyer, don't you trust me? No. I wrote simply. I'll never trust anyone in your family again. There was no response after that. The next day, Camila signed the documents without reading the full content. Her immediate greed overcame any legal caution. My lawyer Ricardo Torres explained to her in simple terms what she was signing. A complete waiver of any present or future claims on my assets. She nodded mechanically, her eyes fixed on the check resting on the desk. When she finally had the money in her hands, she left without saying goodbye. Ricardo looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. Matthias, are you sure about this? I know they betrayed you, but this is very harsh. Harsher than living a lie for 12 years. I asked. Harsher than discovering that the person sleeping next to you was planning to run away with another man on your anniversary. He had no answer for that. Gabriella's funeral was held 3 days later at a modest funeral home on the other side of town. I didn't attend. Instead, that day I signed the final papers to dissolve the business partnership with the estate of Rodrigo Sanchez. His heirs would receive their share as legally stipulated, but I would maintain full control of the company I had built mostly with my own effort and vision. That night, while checking social media out of morbid curiosity, I saw the funeral pictures. It was exactly what $25,000 could buy. Modest, sparse, almost sad. I recognized some of Gabriella's relatives, a few mutual friends. Camila was at the center of all the photos, dressed in black, sobbing dramatically, the epitome of the devastated daughter. The comments under the photos were predictably outraged. Where's the husband? What a shame the family had to pay for this. The true character of people is revealed in moments like these. I closed the app without feeling anything. Let them think what they wanted. The truth would eventually come out, or not. I no longer cared about the opinions of people who had remained silent about the affair for years. What I didn't expect was for the truth to come out so soon and in such an explosive way. A week after the funeral, I received a call from an unknown number. A woman with a trembling voice identified herself as Monica Sanchez, Rodrigo's wife. Mr. Herrera, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. I agreed out of curiosity. We met at a neutral coffee shop, far from our usual circles. Monica was an elegant woman in her 40s, with perfectly coiffed brown hair and a tailored suit that screamed old money. But her eyes were red and swollen, and her hands trembled when she lifted her coffee cup. Thank you for coming, she began. I know this must be strange for you, but I found something after the accident. While I was going through Rodrigo's things, I found this. She slid a manila envelope across the table. I opened it cautiously. Inside were bank statements, hotel receipts, printed text messages, the documented evidence of an affair that had lasted not weeks or months, but years. For years to be exact. For years, I repeated out loud, feeling the numbers sink into my chest like a stone. Since before Rodrigo and I were married, Monica confirmed, her voice breaking. He lied to me from the beginning. Our wedding, our children. It was all a lie. While he was maintaining this relationship with your wife. I reviewed the documents with trembling hands. There were receipts from expensive restaurants where I had never been with Gabriella, hotel reservations on dates she was supposedly visiting her mother, bank transfers from the joint account she shared with Rodrigo to an account I didn't recognize. "There's more," Monica said, pulling out another envelope. "I found a hidden phone in his office, a phone he only used to communicate with her. The messages are explicit. They were planning to divorce both of us after the vacation in the Bahamas. Rodrigo was going to take half of our money, and Gabriella was planning to claim an inheritance that supposedly belonged to her from her family." "Gabriella had no inheritance," I said automatically. "Her family has no money." "I know," Monica replied bitterly. "That's why I investigated. I discovered that they were planning to forge documents, create a story about a distant aunt who had passed away, all to justify the money Rodrigo was going to give her from our accounts." The magnitude of the deception left me speechless. It wasn't just an affair, it was an elaborate conspiracy, a scam designed to strip both of us of our resources while they started a new life together. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally asked. Monica looked me directly in the eyes. "Because I have 2 young children who are one day going to ask why their father died with another woman. And because your wife's family is spreading rumors all over town that you're a heartless monster who abandoned your wife in death. I thought you deserved to know the full truth, and I thought that maybe you'd want to help me make sure that truth comes out. What do you propose?" I have access to all the correspondence between them. For years of messages, photos, plans. Rodrigo was meticulous about documenting everything. I suppose for some twisted legal reason related to our eventual divorce. "If you want, we can make this information public. Not for revenge," she quickly clarified, "but for the truth, so that our families, our friends, the entire community knows exactly who Gabriella and Rodrigo were." I thought about Camila, about Gabriella's family, about everyone who had called me cruel and heartless. I thought about the comments on social media, the looks of judgment I had received at the supermarket, at the gas station, everywhere. "Let's do it," I said. Over the next 2 weeks, Monica and I worked with our respective lawyers to compile the evidence in a way that was irrefutable and legally sound. Ricardo initially objected, arguing that it was unnecessary, that it would only prolong the pain. But when he saw the full extent of the deception, when he read the messages where Gabriella made fun of me, where she called Rodrigo my true love, while they planned how to extract the maximum amount of money from both marriages, he changed his mind. "This isn't revenge," he finally admitted. "This is self-defense." We decided to release the information in phases. First, we sent copies of the most relevant documents to the closest relatives of both. Gabriella's mother, her brother Daniel, Rodrigo's parents, his siblings, without comments, without explanations, just the pure, hard evidence. The reactions were immediate and varied. Gabriella's mother called me crying. "This can't be real. My daughter wasn't like that. You're making it up. The bank statements don't lie, Mrs. Ramirez. The text messages have verifiable dates. The hotel receipts have signatures. Do you want me to send you the pictures they took together? The ones Rodrigo kept on his secret phone." She hung up without answering. Daniel, Gabriella's brother, had a different reaction. He called my office and asked to see me in person. When he arrived, he looked like he had aged 10 years in a week. "I need to apologize," he said without preamble. "At the funeral, I said horrible things about you. I convinced others that you were a heartless man. And all this time they were the liars. I completed. I should have believed you when you said Gabriella died with her lover. I thought you were being dramatic, that the pain was making you exaggerate. I never imagined it was so calculated. 4 years of cheating are not a slip-up," I said. They were years of conscious decisions, elaborate lies, premeditated betrayal. Daniel sank into the chair in front of my desk. "What are you going to do now? Are you going to make this public beyond the family?" "Monica and I are considering our options. I would understand if you did," he admitted. "But think about Camila. She's already lost her mother. If this becomes public, her reputation will be destroyed by association." "Camila knew," I said coldly. "I found proof in her purse. She knew about the affair and never told me anything. She protected her mother while treating me like a walking bank." Daniel had no answer for that. 2 days later, Monica's mother published a long post on her social media. She was an older woman, respected in the community, with thousands of followers due to her work in local charities. Her post didn't mention names specifically, but anyone who knew the situation would immediately understand who she was referring to. When someone dies, we tend to canonize them, to forget their flaws and remember only the good. But sometimes honoring someone's memory means perpetuating a lie that harms the innocent. My son-in-law was not the man we thought he was, and the woman he died with was not who she appeared to be either. They both built lives based on lies, hurting their faithful spouses while planning a future together financed with the money of those they betrayed. The truth hurts, but the lie hurts more in the long run. The post went viral in our community. The comments exploded. Some defended the memory of Gabriella and Rodrigo, arguing that the dead deserve peace. But others, especially those who had been genuine friends of mine or Monica's, began to share their own suspicions that they had ignored. Small inconsistencies that now made sense. Camila called me that night, hysterical. "How could you? You destroyed my mother's memory. People are saying horrible things. People are saying the truth." I replied calmly, "Your mother built her own reputation with her actions. I just made sure those actions were known. You're a monster, a vengeful, heartless man. I'm a man who got tired of being treated like an idiot. You knew. Camila, you knew about the affair, and you kept me in the dark. Don't feign outrage now. I had no proof, just suspicions. You had enough information to tell me something, but you chose to protect your mother because it was convenient for you. As long as I paid the bills, as long as I maintained your lifestyle, my happiness didn't matter." The silence that followed was long and heavy. "I can't even look at you," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I hope I never see you again in my life. The feeling is mutual." I replied and hung up. The next morning, Monica and I took the final step. We published a joint statement through our lawyer's address to the local media. It was not sensationalist or vengeful, it was simply factual. A timeline of the deception backed by documentary evidence, explaining why both of us had made the decisions we had regarding the funerals, inheritances, and management of the assets. The local newspaper published the story in its community news section. It wasn't a front-page scandal, but it was enough. The truth was out there, available to anyone who wanted to know it. The consequences were immediate. Gabriella's relatives, who had harassed me with calls, stopped contacting me. Mutual friends who had judged me began to send timid apologies via text message. Rodrigo's family, devastated by their own revelation, remained silent, but the most shocking reaction came from an unexpected place. 3 weeks after publishing the truth, I received a certified letter. The sender was a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a lawsuit. Camila was suing me for defamation, emotional distress, and loss of economic opportunities due to the damage to her mother's reputation. Ricardo almost laughed when I showed him the documents. "This will go nowhere. You have documentary evidence of everything. Besides, she signed a waiver of any claim. Can she argue that the waiver was obtained under emotional duress? She can try, but she won't win. And if she pushes too hard, we can countersue for the debts Gabriella accumulated on cards that you paid for. Debts that were legally her responsibility, but that you covered. We could claim that money from Gabriella's estate, which would technically now belong to Camila as the sole heir. How much are we talking about?" Ricardo reviewed his files from the last 12 years, calculating conservatively. "Approximately $320,000 in Gabriella's personal expenses that you covered, but that weren't strictly necessary for the maintenance of the household. Designer clothes, jewelry, spa trips, beauty treatments, all documented, all with receipts." An idea began to form in my mind. What if we let her proceed with the lawsuit? And then we countersue? Ricardo smiled slowly. You'd end up with a trial that would put every sordid detail of the affair on public record. Every text message, every hotel receipt, every bank transfer. Are you sure you want that? Camila had the opportunity to accept the $25,000 and disappear with some dignity. I said, if she wants a fight, I'll give her a fight. Over the next 2 months, the legal process moved slowly. Camila's lawyer presented weak arguments about the emotional impact of my cruel revelations about her deceased mother. Ricardo responded with the full evidence of the affair, demonstrating that there was no defamation when the truth was backed by irrefutable proof. But the real bombshell came when we filed our countersuit. We not only claimed the $20,000 in frivolous expenses, but we also included a claim for fraud. We argued that Gabriella had obtained those funds under false pretenses, maintaining a fraudulent marriage while planning to leave it for another man. Camila's lawyer tried to withdraw the original lawsuit. Ricardo refused to allow it without a settlement that favored us completely. Finally, 6 months after Gabriella's death, Camila and I came face to face in a mediation room. She looked haggard, exhausted. The weight of maintaining her mother's charade, combined with the growing legal costs, had clearly taken its toll. "What do you want?" she asked in a tired voice when we sat down. "I want you to withdraw your lawsuit with prejudice, which means you can never sue me again for these matters," I said. "I want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement about any aspect of my private or financial life, and I want a public apology for the false accusations you made against me. And if I do all that, I'll withdraw my countersuit. I won't seek the $320,000. You can go on with your life without owing me anything." Camila looked at me with pure hatred. "How can you be so cold? My mother is dead." "Your mother betrayed me for 4 years," I replied. "She planned to rob me, lie to me, and abandon me. And you knew it. So don't talk to me about coldness, Camila. I learned from the best." She signed the documents without reading, just as she had signed the waiver months before. Some habits never die. Camila's public apology came 3 days later in the form of a brief, clearly forced post on her social media. "I would like to retract previous comments made about Matias Herrera. I acted based on incomplete information and emotion, not facts. I regret any damage caused to his reputation." It didn't mention her mother. It didn't mention the affair. It was the bare minimum required by our legal agreement. But it was enough. The comments under her post were predictably divided. Some supported her, saying she was being forced. Others pointed out that she was finally acknowledging the truth. I didn't comment, didn't react. I just let it exist as another public record of how it had all ended. With the legal matter resolved, I expected to feel some kind of definitive closure. But life, I discovered, rarely offers closures as neat as one expects. 2 weeks after Camila's apology, I was in my office working late when I received an unexpected visitor. The receptionist called me on the intercom with a nervous voice. "Mr. Herrera, there's a woman here who insists on seeing you. She says it's urgent. Her name is Patricia Ruiz." The name didn't ring a bell. "Did she mention what it's about?" "She says it's about Gabriella. She says you'll want to hear what she has to say." I almost refused. I had had enough of surprises related to my late wife, but curiosity won. "Send her in." Patricia Ruiz was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and a face that showed both determination and discomfort. She carried a professional briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to corporate environments. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment," she began after shaking my hand. "I know this is unusual, but I work for the central bank, specifically in the Financial Fraud Investigation Department." My stomach tensed. "Fraud investigation? Don't worry, you're not being investigated." She quickly clarified, "But your late wife was, or more precisely, she and Rodrigo Sanchez were." She sat down without waiting for an invitation and opened her briefcase, extracting a thick folder. "For about 2 years now, we have been investigating a money laundering ring that operated through several shell companies. During our investigation, the names of Gabriela Ramirez de Herrera and Rodrigo Sanchez appeared repeatedly in suspicious transactions. Money laundering, I repeated, feeling the floor move under my feet. "What are you talking about?" Patricia slid several documents across the desk. Rodrigo Sanchez had access to significant investment funds through his financial consulting firm. Over the last 4 years, he systematically diverted small amounts of money from multiple client accounts to fictitious companies that he and your wife created. The amounts were small enough not to raise immediate alarms, but cumulatively. We're talking about approximately $800,000. The number was so absurd I almost laughed. 2 million. Rodrigo had a successful company. Why would he need to steal? Because his company wasn't as successful as it appeared, Patricia explained. Rodrigo had significant gambling debts. Approximately $200,000 that he owed to private lenders of the type that don't accept defaults. He needed money fast, and apparently convinced Gabriella to help him create it. I reviewed the documents with trembling hands. There were bank statements from accounts I didn't recognize, all in the name of LLCs I had never heard of. But on several documents, as a registered agent or secondary signatory, Gabriella's name appeared. She was actively involved, Patricia continued. She wasn't simply the ignorant girlfriend. Gabriella opened several of these accounts, signed incorporation documents, even made wire transfers. She has her fingerprints all over this operation. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Why not before? Because the investigation was ongoing when they both passed away. With their death, the case became more complicated. We can't prosecute dead people, but we have an obligation to recover the stolen funds to return them to the victims. And here's where the situation becomes relevant to you. She pulled out another document. Gabriella used your personal information in several of these documents. Your social security number, your address, even copies of your driver's license. Basically, she implicated you in the fraud without your knowledge or consent. The rage I had been keeping under control for months finally erupted. You're telling me that not only did she cheat on me, but she also used me to commit crimes. That's exactly what I'm saying. And there's more. Some of the stolen money was transferred to joint accounts you shared with Gabriella. Not large amounts, maybe $20,000 or $30,000 in total, mixed with legitimate deposits to make them look normal. But technically, that stolen money passed through your accounts. I never authorized. I know, she interrupted me. We've reviewed your transaction patterns, your tax returns, everything. It's clear that you had no knowledge of these activities, but legally the situation is complicated. The stolen funds passed through accounts in your name. The victims of the fraud could potentially sue to recover those funds from you. I sank into my chair, feeling the weight of this new revelation. What do you need from me? I need your full cooperation in the investigation, access to all bank records from the last 5 years, any documents Gabriella might have kept in the house, emails, any communication that might help us trace the money. In return, we'll work with you to ensure that the victims understand that you were also a victim in this scheme. And if some of those victims still want to sue me. Patricia sighed. It's possible, but with our documentation showing that you had no involvement in the fraud, your chances of prevailing legally are minimal. Still, it could be a long and costly process to defend yourself. Of course it could, because Gabriella, even in death, was still finding ways to destroy my life. Over the next few weeks, my house turned into a paper crime scene. Bank investigators, forensic auditors, and federal agents went through every document Gabriella had touched. They found more than they expected. In boxes stored in the attic, they discovered fake contracts, fictitious invoices, corporate documents for companies that had never really operated. Gabriella had been meticulous in her criminality, keeping records of everything, perhaps as insurance against Rodrigo, or maybe just because it was in her nature to be organized even in fraud. They also found something else. A diary. It wasn't the kind of teenage diary with intimate thoughts and emotions. It was a cold, calculated record of transactions, dates, amounts. But in the margins, Gabriella had written notes, small comments that revealed her true thoughts about everything. Matthias signed the refinancing papers today without reading. Typical 20,000 more available to move. S. mother called me worried because I haven't visited her in months. I told her I was busy with volunteer work. She believed everything. These idiots always believe everything. Rodrigo is pushing to speed up the plan. He says his creditors are getting impatient. I told him to slow down or he'll ruin everything. He's emotional. I'm practical. That's why this will work. And the most revealing one. Camila suspects something. I saw her looking at the bank statements when she thought I wasn't watching. I'll have to talk to her. Make sure she understands that this benefits all of us. Matthias has more than enough. He won't miss what we take. I read every page of that diary with a mix of horror and morbid fascination. This was the real Gabriella. Without masks, without pretense. A woman who had seen our marriage as nothing more than an economic opportunity, who had planned every move with surgical precision, who had involved her own daughter in the conspiracy. Patricia found the diary particularly valuable. This documents clear premeditation. If she were alive, this would guarantee a conviction. As it is, it helps us track where the money went. It turned out that most of the stolen money had been transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Gabriella and Rodrigo had planned to access those funds after divorcing Monica and me, settle in some country with no extradition treaty, and live comfortably off the stolen money for the rest of their lives. The accident had ended that plan abruptly. The money was still there, inaccessible without the passwords and access codes that had died with them. We'll recover most of it eventually, Patricia assured me. But it will take time. Offshore banks are not known for their speedy cooperation. While the financial investigation continued, another problem arose. Rodrigo's clients, who had been defrauded, began to organize. They formed a group of 27 people who had collectively lost $2,800,000. And although most of them understood that I was also a victim, 3 of them decided to sue me anyway. Their arguments were technically valid, though morally questionable. Some of the stolen money had passed through accounts in my name. Therefore, I had a responsibility to return it. The fact that I didn't know the money was stolen was, according to their lawyers, irrelevant. Ricardo was furious when he received the lawsuits. This is absurd. You have clear documentation that you were defrauded. Gabriella's diary exonerates you completely, but the money passed through my accounts. I pointed out, technically they have an argument, a weak argument that won't prevail in court, but defending it will cost time and money. He was right. Although we would eventually win, the process would be exhausting. And there was another consideration. These people had really lost their money. They had trusted Rodrigo with their retirement savings, college funds for their children, life savings, and they had lost it all because of the greed of 2 people I had had the misfortune to know. I made a decision that surprised Ricardo. I want to establish a restitution fund. What? Matthias, you have no legal obligation to. It's not about legal obligation. I interrupted him. It's about what's right. These people were victimized by Gabriella and Rodrigo. I was also victimized by them. I'm not going to let Gabriella turn me into another instrument of her damage. If I can help these people recover some of what they lost, I will. We're talking about potentially millions of dollars. I have the resources. My company is successful. I have no dependents. I have no significant debts. And frankly, after discovering that stolen money was in my accounts, I don't feel comfortable keeping a single cent that might be contaminated. Over the next few weeks, we worked with Patricia and the bank to calculate exactly how much stolen money had passed through my personal and corporate accounts. The final figure was $2,000 over 4 years. I established a fund with that amount plus an additional $50,000 of my own money as a gesture of goodwill. The money would be distributed among all the victims of the fraud proportionally to their losses. It wouldn't cover their full losses, not by a long shot, but it was something. When I announced my intention to the plaintiffs through Ricardo, 2 of them immediately withdrew their lawsuits and sent letters of apology. The third, a bitter man named Ernesto Campos, who had lost his daughter's entire college fund, insisted on continuing with the lawsuit anyway. He wants blood? Ricardo explained. He doesn't care about the money. He wants someone to pay, and since Rodrigo is dead, you're the closest target. Let him proceed then. I said, tired of fighting. We'll present our defense and let the judge decide. Campos's case eventually went to court 6 months later. It was a one-day proceeding where we presented Gabriella's diary, Patricia's testimony about the fraud investigation, and my own financial records, showing that I had been completely ignorant of the criminal activities. The judge ruled in my favor in less than an hour of deliberation. It's clear to this court, he said from the bench, that Mr. Herrera was a victim in this fraudulent scheme, just as much as any of Rodrigo Sanchez's clients. There is no legal basis to hold him responsible for crimes committed without his knowledge or consent. Campos stormed out of the courtroom. I left exhausted but relieved. That night, alone in my house, I poured myself the whiskey that had become my nightly ritual and sat on the terrace. It had been almost a year since Gabriella's death, a year of revelations, betrayals, legal battles, and rebuilding. My phone rang. It was Monica Sanchez. I saw the news about your court case, she said. Congratulations. Thanks. How are your kids? Adjusting, therapy helps. I told them the truth about their father, adapted to their age. Of course, they deserved to know why their family fell apart. How did they take it? Better than I expected. Kids are resilient, and honestly, I think they already sensed something was wrong. They just needed confirmation that it wasn't their imagination. We talked for an hour about our respective recoveries, about the ongoing legal battles to recover the stolen funds, about how to rebuild lives after everything you thought you knew turned out to be a lie. You know what's the strangest thing? Monica said before hanging up. I don't miss Rodrigo. I miss the idea of who I thought he was. But the real man, the liar, the thief. I feel nothing for him. It's as if he died years ago when the affair began. And I just realized it. I understand exactly what you mean, I replied. After hanging up, I thought about Camila. I hadn't heard from her since her forced apology months ago. Out of curiosity, I checked her social media. Her profile was set to private now, but her profile picture showed a woman who looked thinner, more tired. The public comments on her previous posts had been disabled. I wondered if she had learned anything from all this. If she had recognized that her mother's actions had not only destroyed me, but had also ruined her own life by association. Probably not. Some people never learn. What I did know was that I had learned. I had learned that blind love is dangerous, that trust must be earned and verified, that ignored red flags eventually become complete disasters. But I had also learned something else, that I could survive, that I could rebuild, that I didn't need the validation of people who had never really valued me. Life eventually settled into a new rhythm. The months turned into routine, work, weekly therapy that Ricardo had insisted I take, occasional dinners with Monica and her kids where we shared the strange brotherhood of victims who understand each other. 18 months after Gabriella's death, the financial investigation finally concluded. Patricia called me with the news. We recovered a $600,000 from the offshore accounts, she announced. It's not the full amount, but it's significant. After legal and administrative costs, the victims will receive approximately 60% of their original losses. That's better than I expected. I admitted. There's something else. During the final investigation, we found evidence that Camila not only knew about the fraud, but had received money directly from the stolen accounts. Approximately $85,000 over 3 years transferred as gifts from her mother. My stomach sank. 85,000 payments for her car, her apartment, trips, credit cards, all legally. She could be held responsible for returning that money to the victims. Is she going to be prosecuted? Patricia sighed. That depends on the prosecutor. Technically, she received stolen money, but proving she knew it was stolen is more complicated. She could argue that she thought it was just her mother being generous. But you and I know she knew more than she admits. I know, but knowing something and proving it legally are two different things. I've referred the case to the prosecutor. They'll decide if there's enough evidence to proceed. 2 weeks later, I received a call from a number I recognized as Camila's. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. Matthias, her voice sounded small, scared. I need to talk to you, please. Don't hang up. What do you want, Camila? I received a subpoena from the prosecutor. They say I received stolen money, that I could go to prison. Her voice broke. Matthias, I didn't know. I swear. I thought Mom was just being generous. Do you seriously expect me to believe that you found the Bahamas reservation? You knew about the affair, and now you want me to believe you didn't know the money was stolen. I knew about the affair, she admitted between sobs, but I didn't know about the fraud. They're different things. I would never have knowingly accepted stolen money. But you did accept money while you knew your mother was destroying my marriage. I don't see much of a moral difference. Please. The prosecutor says if I cooperate fully, if I return the money, I might avoid charges. But I don't have $85,000. I spent it all. If they prosecute me, I'll have a criminal record. I'll never get a decent job. My life will be ruined. Your mother ruined many lives, Camila, including yours. Maybe it's time you face the consequences of being complicit in her actions. I wasn't complicit. I was just her daughter trying to have a relationship with her mother. You were an adult woman from 21 to 24, accepting tens of thousands of dollars while you watched your mother destroy my life. You could have said something. You could have done the right thing. You chose not to. Silence on the other end of the line. Then with a voice I barely recognized because it was so broken. If I testify against Mom, if I tell them everything I know about the affair and the fraud, will you talk to the prosecutor for me? Would you tell them I cooperated? I thought carefully before answering. What else do you know that you haven't told us? Names. Mom mentioned other partners. Other people involved, not just Rodrigo. There were at least 2 other people helping them move the money. I could identify them. This was new. What kind of people? An accountant, I think, and someone who worked at a bank. Mom never said specific names in front of me, but I overheard conversations. I know details that could help find them. I called Patricia immediately after hanging up with Camila. She was very interested. If there are really more people involved, that would significantly expand the case. Do you think she's telling the truth? Camila lies when it suits her. I said, but she's desperate. Desperation sometimes produces honesty. Arrange a meeting. I'll be there with the prosecutor. If her information is valuable, she might negotiate immunity or at least reduce charges. The meeting took place at the prosecutor's offices 3 days later. Camila arrived with a public defender who looked as exhausted as she did. She had lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, and all the arrogance that once characterized her had been replaced by pure fear. For 3 hours, Camila detailed everything she knew. She described conversations she had overheard between Gabriela and Rodrigo. She identified an accountant named Fernando Rivas, who had apparently helped create the shell companies. She mentioned a woman named Lucia, who worked in the international transfers department of a bank and who had facilitated the offshore movements. "Why didn't you say any of this before?" the prosecutor, a stern man named Arturo Mendoza, asked. "I was scared," Camila admitted. "Scared that if I said anything, Mom would end up in prison. Scared of losing the money she was giving me. Scared of being alone. I made the wrong choice. I know that now." Patricia and the prosecutor looked at each other. "We'll need to verify all this information," Patricia said. "If it turns out to be accurate, we'll talk about immunity." Over the next few weeks, the investigators followed Camila's leads. They turned out to be golden. Fernando Rivas was located operating a small accounting firm in a suburb when he was confronted with the evidence. He immediately broke down and confessed everything. He had created 22 different shell companies for Gabriela and Rodrigo in exchange for under-the-table payments. Lucia Vargas was harder to find. She had resigned from her banking position 6 months earlier and had apparently disappeared. But the bank records Patricia obtained through a court order showed that she had facilitated transfers worth $200,000 to the Cayman Islands. An arrest warrant was issued. With this new information, Gabriela and Rodrigo's criminal network was revealed to be much more extensive than anyone had imagined. They hadn't been just two greedy lovers. They had been the center of a fraud operation involving multiple accomplices and victims in 3 different countries. "Your wife was a sophisticated criminal," Patricia told me during one of our updates. "Not an amateur who made a mistake. This was meticulously planned for years." The revelation should have shattered me. Instead, it freed me from the last illusion I might have been holding on to, that maybe at some point Gabriela had really loved me. She hadn't. She probably never did. I had been a mark, a target, a source of funds, and respectable cover for her criminal activities. Accepting that truth hurt less than I expected, maybe because I had already mourned the woman I thought I had known. Camila received full immunity in exchange for her testimony. Prosecutor Mendoza called me personally to inform me. "I know this may not feel like justice to you," he said, "but her cooperation was crucial. Without her, Rivas and Vargas would still be free and the victims would never have recovered anything." "I understand," I replied. "I just hope Camila has really learned something from this. Between you and me, I think she has." I saw her in court during Rivas's hearings. She looked shattered. Sometimes consequences teach better than any sermon. Fernando Rivas's trial became local news. The media covered every sordid detail of the fraud. The network of shell companies, the victims who had lost their savings. Gabriela's name was mentioned repeatedly, not as the dead wife who deserved mourning, but as the calculating criminal who had orchestrated the scheme along with Rodrigo. Rivas was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Lucia Vargas was finally located in Costa Rica and extradited. Her trial was pending. Monica and I were invited to a meeting with all the victims of the fraud after the final distribution of the recovered funds was completed. Some people thanked us for our cooperation. Others simply nodded, still processing their losses. Ernesto Campos, the man who had sued me, approached at the end. He looked older, more tired. "I want to apologize," he said bluntly, "for the lawsuit, for blaming you when it wasn't your fault. I was angry and I needed an enemy. You were convenient." "I understand," I said, and I meant it. "We all need to blame someone when we're hurt. My daughter is going to college anyway." He continued. "Not to the one we originally planned, but she's there. We got loans, scholarships, and with what we recovered from the restitution fund and your personal contribution, we were able to pay for her first year in full. That meant a lot." After he left, Monica looked at me with a small smile. "You did a good thing establishing that fund. You didn't have to. Gabriela used my name to hurt these people." I said, "I couldn't live knowing my name was associated with her damage without trying to correct it." 2 years after Gabriela's death, I received a letter in the mail. The sender was Camila. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me stop. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Matthias, I don't expect you to read this, much less respond, but my therapist says writing this is part of my process, so here I am. I want to apologize. Not a forced apology from a lawyer, but a real one. I knew Mom was cheating on you. I knew she was using you, and I convinced myself it was okay because everyone did that, or because you could afford it, or any other pathetic excuse I told myself. The truth is, I was jealous of you. Jealous that Mom had to pretend to respect you when she never had to pretend anything with me. Jealous that your life seemed so stable when mine always felt chaotic. So, when I had the chance to be complicit in hurting you, I took it, and I hated myself for it, even while I was doing it. I now work at a call center, earning $9 an hour. I live in a studio apartment I can barely afford, and I finally understand what it's like to earn a living. I honestly understand the value of what you built and what Mom and I stole from you, not just financially, but emotionally. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what we did, and that if I could go back in time, I would have done everything differently. Camila, I read the letter 3 times. It sounded genuine. Maybe it was. Maybe Camila had really changed, or maybe she had just learned to write more convincing apologies. I didn't reply to the letter, not because I was angry, but because there was simply nothing more to say. That chapter of my life was closed. Camila would have to live with her choices, just as I had learned to live with the consequences of having trusted the wrong people. I put the letter in the same drawer where I had put Gabriella's diary, the pictures of our wedding, all the physical remains of 12 years of my life. Someday maybe I could look at those things without feeling anything. I hadn't gotten there yet, but I was closer than before. 3 years after Gabriella's death, I finally sold the house. Not because I needed the money, but because every room still carried contaminated memories. Memories of a life that had never been real. I sold it to a young couple with 2 small children. I watched them walk through the rooms, imagining their future there, and I felt a strange peace. This house would have a second chance with people who really loved each other. I moved into a modern apartment in the city center, minimalist, functional, completely mine, with no history, no ghosts. Monica had also made changes. She sold the mansion she had shared with Rodrigo and bought a more modest house near good schools for her children. We would meet for coffee occasionally, a friendship forged in the fire of shared betrayal. The kids asked me about their father yesterday. She told me during one of our meetings, not about the fraud or the affair. They wanted to know if he ever really loved them. What did you tell them? That yes, in his own way, that people can love and hurt simultaneously, that his love for them doesn't excuse what he did, but it also doesn't completely invalidate it. She sighed. I don't know if it's the right answer, but it's the only honest one I have. I thought about that. I think Gabriella loved me in her own way too, a selfish, superficial, conditional way, but it was the only form of love she was capable of giving. Does that help you think that way? I don't know, but it helps me stop wondering what I did wrong, what I could have changed. There was nothing to change. She was who she was from the beginning. My financial consulting firm thrived. Without the emotional distractions of the fraudulent marriage, I focused completely on work. We expanded to 2 new cities, hired 20 more employees. We tripled the revenue. But most importantly, I changed the culture of the company. I implemented exhaustive controls, independent quarterly audits, full transparency in all transactions. Never again would I allow my name to be associated with fraud, not even accidentally. I also established a nonprofit foundation to help victims of financial fraud. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it helped real people with free legal advice and support to navigate the complexities of recovering their losses. It's your way of turning poison into medicine, my therapist observed during one of our sessions. After 2 years, I had finally accepted that I needed professional help to process everything. I suppose so, I admitted. Gabriella made me a victim. Now I help other victims. There's a symmetry in that. There's also healing. You're taking your most painful experience and using it to create something positive. That's genuine growth. One spring day, 4 years after the accident, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "A long overdue apology." The sender was Daniel, Gabriella's brother. I hadn't had contact with him since shortly after the funeral. "Matthias, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you delete this message without reading, but I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. I knew not about the financial fraud. That shocked me as much as it did you. But I knew about Rodrigo. I saw how they looked at each other at family gatherings. I overheard suspicious phone conversations, and I never told you anything. I convinced myself it wasn't my place, that I had no real proof, that maybe I was misinterpreting, but the truth is, it was easier not to say anything, easier to keep the family peace than to do the right thing. When they died and the whole truth came out, I hated myself for my silence. I've been in therapy trying to understand why I valued my sister's comfort over your well-being. I don't have a good answer. I just wanted you to know that I deeply regret my cowardice. You deserved better from your in-laws. You deserved better from all of us, Daniel. I read the email several times. It was genuine, no excuses, no attempts to minimize his complicity, just raw honesty. I replied briefly, "Thank you for the honesty. I forgive you, not for you, but for me. Carrying resentment is too heavy." His reply came minutes later. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I accept it with humility. I hope you find peace, Matthias. You deserve it." That night, for the first time in years, I took out the pictures of my wedding with Gabriella. I really looked at them, without the filter of pain or anger, just looking. We were young in these pictures. I was 30, Gabriella was 28. We looked happy. Maybe she really had been happy at first before greed and deceit became her entire identity. Or maybe it had always been an act. I would never know for sure. And finally, after 4 years, I was okay with not knowing. I put the pictures away again. I didn't throw them out. They were part of my story, for better or worse. But I no longer needed them to remember who I was or what I had learned. 5 years after the accident, the financial investigation was finally officially closed. Lucia Vargas had been sentenced to 6 years in prison. All recoverable funds had been distributed. The legal cases were resolved. Patricia called me to give me the final news. "It's all officially over. The case is closed. Thanks for everything." I said sincerely. I know it was a lot of work. It was the most complex case of my career, but also the most important. We helped real people get their lives back. That matters. That night, Monica organized a small dinner. Just the two of us and her kids, now 12 and 14. Bright, resilient kids who had processed their father's betrayal better than many adults. "Mom says you were Dad's friend." The older boy, a boy named Andres with his mother's intelligent eyes, told me. I confirmed. Or I thought I was. "Are you mad at him?" I thought carefully about my answer. These children deserved honesty, but they also deserved the chance to form their own opinions about their father. I was angry, I finally said, very angry. But anger is like carrying heavy stones. Eventually you have to put them down, or they'll crush you. So I put them down. Does that mean you forgave him? It means I decided not to let his choices define my life. I don't know if that's forgiveness or just survival. Probably a bit of both. Andres nodded thoughtfully. "Mom says something similar, that Dad made bad choices, but that doesn't mean we have to let those choices ruin our lives. Your mom is also very wise." Monica smiled from across the table. We had come a long way, both of us, from shattered victims to people who had rebuilt their lives with intention and purpose. After dinner, while I was helping to clean up, Monica asked me, "Do you ever think about dating again?" "About finding someone sometimes," I admitted. "But the idea of trusting someone like that again is difficult." "I know. I feel the same way, but not everyone is like them. Not everyone lies and betrays. That's what my therapist says." "Therapists are usually right." She smiled. Unfortunately, 6 months later, I accepted a blind date arranged by a work colleague. A woman named Andrea, a math teacher, divorced with no children. The date was pleasant. No fireworks, no instant connection, just easy conversation and genuine laughter. We had a second date, then a third. After the fifth, when she kissed me goodnight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. "You need to know something about me?" I told her on our 10th date before things got more serious. My wife cheated on me for years. She used me to commit fraud. She died with her lover and left me with massive trust issues that will probably never completely go away. Andrea looked me directly in the eyes. My ex-husband was a gambling addict. He lost our savings, mortgaged our house without telling me, and disappeared, leaving me with $300,000 in debt. So I have massive trust issues too. We looked at each other across the table. Two broken people trying to figure out if they could build something new with their damaged pieces. "Do you want to try anyway?" I asked. "Slowly," she said, very slowly, with complete honesty about everything. "I can do that," and we did it slowly, carefully, with the kind of deliberate communication that only people who have been devastated can truly appreciate. Every fear expressed, Every insecurity shared, every small step towards vulnerability celebrated as the victory it was. It wasn't the fairy tale romance I had had with Gabriella. It was better. It was real. 7 years after the accident, I woke up in my apartment on a Saturday morning. Andrea was in the kitchen making coffee. We had been living together for 6 months, a step we had both carefully considered before taking. My phone showed a message from Monica. The kids want to know if you and Andrea are coming to Andres' soccer game today and pizza afterwards. I replied yes. This was my family now, not by blood, but by choice. People who had seen me at my worst and decided to stay anyway. While I was drinking coffee with Andrea talking about nothing important, I realized something. I was happy, not in the ignorant, naive way I had been happy with Gabriella. It was a deeper, more conscious happiness. The happiness of someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side, scarred, but stronger. Gabriella had tried to destroy me. Camila had been complicit. Gabriella's family had judged me without knowing the truth, and yet, here I was. Not destroyed, rebuilt. That afternoon, while I watched Andres score a goal and celebrate with his team, while Monica shouted her support and Andrea held my hand, I understood the final truth. The best revenge hadn't been canceling Gabriella's funeral or cutting off Camila's inheritance or exposing the fraud publicly. The best revenge had been surviving, healing, and building a life better than the lie they had tried to sell me. 10 years after the accident, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. The name on the envelope surprised me. Camila Ramirez. Inside was a handwritten note. I know you probably don't want to come, and I would completely understand, but I'm getting married to someone who has taught me what real love and honesty mean. I'd like you to meet him, if you're willing, not to reconcile, just so you can see that I finally learned my lesson. No pressure, Camila. I showed the invitation to Andrea. We had been married for 3 years now. A small ceremony with just our closest friends and Monica with her children. Do you want to go? Andrea asked. I don't know. Part of me is curious. Did she really change? Or is it another manipulation? There's only one way to find out. We decided to go, more out of curiosity than any desire for reconnection. The wedding was modest, in a public garden with maybe 50 guests. Nothing like the extravagance Camila would have demanded years ago. Camila saw us arrive and approached nervously. She looked different, thinner, yes, but also more genuine in a way. Less makeup, simpler clothes, a smile that didn't seem calculated. You came, she said with genuine surprise. I didn't think you'd actually come. Andrea convinced me. I admitted. Who's the lucky guy? His name is Miguel. He's a high school teacher. I met him in a support group for people who have been involved in criminal activities and are trying to rebuild their lives. Sounds like a good place to start. It was. He knows everything about Mom, about the fraud, about what I did and didn't do, and he accepted me anyway, but with conditions. Continuous therapy, complete honesty, living within our real means. She smiled shyly. It turns out that living honestly is less stressful than living a lie. It's a hard lesson to learn. The hardest I've ever learned. She paused. Matthias, I know I told you this in a letter years ago, but I want to tell you in person. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for being complicit in Mom's affair. I'm sorry for accepting stolen money. I'm sorry for being horrible to you when all you did was take care of us. I believe you. I said and I meant it. And I wish you happiness, Camila. Real happiness, not the fake version that you and your mother were chasing. Tears ran down her cheeks. Thank you. That means more than you can know. The wedding was simple, but genuine. Miguel turned out to be a quiet, thoughtful man who clearly loved Camila, but didn't idolize her. During the reception, I overheard them talking about their honeymoon budget. A cheap bus trip to the nearby mountains. The old Camila would have demanded the Bahamas at a minimum. People really can change, Andrea observed as we drove home that night. Some can, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Do you ever regret how you handled everything? Being so harsh? I thought about that carefully. No, being harsh saved my life. If I had forgiven easily, if I had given in to family pressure to keep the peace, I would have remained a victim. Sometimes the most important compassion is the one you show yourself. Andrea nodded. My therapist says something similar, that forgiveness is important, but not at the expense of your own sanity. At home, that night I took out for the last time the box that contained the remnants of my marriage to Gabriella. The diary, the pictures, the letters, everything I had kept for 10 years, unable to throw it away, but also unable to fully process it. Now, finally, I was ready. Are you going to burn it all? Andrea asked, watching as I went through the contents. No, I'm going to put it in the attic. It happened. It was part of my life. It taught me valuable lessons, but I no longer need to look at it or think about it. I sealed the box and took it to the attic, not with anger or pain, but with simple acceptance. Gabriella had been part of my story, but she no longer defined my present or my future. The following year, Andrea and I adopted a little girl. She had lost her parents in a car accident, strangely similar to how Gabriella and Rodrigo died. She was 8 years old, traumatized, and in need of a stable home. Monica helped us with the process, sharing what she had learned raising her own children through trauma. The most important thing, she said, is age-appropriate honesty. Kids know when you're lying. And if you've lived a big lie, you never want to build your new life on more lies. Our daughter, whom we named Elena in honor of someone Andrea had lost, asked us the tough questions eventually. Why don't you have pictures of your first wife? She asked me one day while looking at the family photos in our living room. Because that marriage ended badly, I answered honestly. She lied to me about important things, and when she died, I decided not to keep her pictures where I could see them every day. Were you angry with her? Very angry. But eventually I decided that being angry only hurt me, not her. So I let go of the anger and built a new life. Elena nodded seriously. Like I have to let go of the anger with the driver who crashed into my parents' car. Exactly like that, sweetheart. Anger is normal, but you can't live there forever. 14 years after the accident, Gabriella's mother died. Daniel called to inform me, not expecting me to attend the funeral, but feeling obligated to notify me. I won't be going, I said simply. I understand. I just thought you should know. She, at the end, before she died, she mentioned your name. She said she was sorry for how they treated you, that she was sorry for not believing you. Too late to matter now. But thank you for telling me. After hanging up, I realized I felt nothing about the news, not satisfaction, not sadness, not additional closure, just nothing, and that was okay. That night, during family dinner, Elena told us about a school project on personal heroes. I'm going to write about you, Dad, she announced. Why me? I asked, genuinely surprised. Because when something bad happened to you, you didn't give up, you didn't become bad, you became stronger and better. That's what real heroes do. I looked at Andrea, who was smiling with tears in her eyes. Then I looked at Elena, this little girl we had welcomed into our lives, and who had given us more than we had given her. I'm not a hero, I said softly. I'm just someone who decided not to let bad people turn me into a bad person too. That's exactly what makes someone a hero, Elena replied with the simple certainty of children. Maybe she was right. Maybe real heroism wasn't about grand gestures or elaborate revenge. It was about getting up every day and choosing health over pain, growth over resentment, love over fear. 16 years after the accident, Camila invited us to meet her newborn son. They had moved into a small house in the suburbs, living on Miguel's teacher's salary and Camila's part-time job at a bookstore. We named him Matthias, Camila said as I held the baby. I hope that's okay. We wanted to honor. We wanted him to have a name of someone who represents integrity. I was surprised to tears. I'm honored. I really am. I've been thinking a lot about Mom lately, Camila said as we watched Miguel play with the baby about how she lived her life chasing what she thought would make her happy. Money, luxury, secret romance. And she died without having experienced true peace for a single day. Some people never learn to distinguish between pleasure and happiness. I almost was one of those people. If I hadn't faced real consequences, if people like you hadn't held firm boundaries, I probably would have followed the same path as Mom. She looked at me directly. You saved my life by being cruel. I understand that now. I wasn't trying to save you. I was trying to save myself. I know, but you saved me anyway. As we were driving home that night with Elena asleep in the back seat, Andrea took my hand. 16 years ago, did you imagine you'd end up here happy, married again, with a daughter, being honored by the person who betrayed you? Never, I admitted. 16 years ago, I just wanted to survive the next day. I couldn't see beyond the pain. But you did. You survived and you built this. I looked through the windshield at the road lit by the headlights. The darkness behind, the light ahead. A fitting metaphor for the entire journey. Today I look back with no regrets. Gabriella cheated on me, used me, and planned to destroy me financially and emotionally. Camila was complicit. Gabriella's family judged me without knowing the truth, and yet, all those betrayals taught me the most valuable lessons of my life. I learned that real love doesn't require you to ignore red flags. I learned that holding boundaries is not cruelty, it's essential self-care. I learned that people will show you who they are if you pay attention. And I learned that surviving is not enough. You have to decide to thrive. The funeral I canceled, the inheritance I denied, the truth I exposed. It was all part of taking back my life from people who thought they could take it without consequences. It wasn't revenge, it was justice, it was survival, it was choosing myself when no one else would. And now, years later, surrounded by people who love me honestly, raising a daughter who understands the difference between strength and cruelty, married to a woman who values the truth as much as I do, I can honestly say, it was worth every painful moment. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? Have you faced betrayal from those you trusted most? I'd love to know your perspective in the comments. And if this story resonated, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe.